You light one up without thinking. Or maybe you never have, and you never will. But somewhere in your body, deep in the wiring of your nervous system, there is a response to smoke that did not begin with you. It began hundreds of thousands of years ago, and it has never fully stopped. This is not a story about cigarettes. It is not a warning label or a public health campaign. This is the real story of smoke and the human body. And the answer to when ancient humans first started smoking is far stranger and far older than you have ever been told. To understand where this begins, you have to go back. Way back. Not to the 1800s when tobacco companies began mass production, not to the indigenous Americas where ceremonial pipe culture flourished for thousands of years. You have to go back nearly 1,000,000 years, to the first moment a human ancestor leaned too close to a fire and breathed in. Fire changed everything. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard University has spent decades arguing that the control of fire was the single most transformative event in human evolutionary history. Not the wheel, not language, fire. His research suggests that Homo erectus, your ancient ancestor, was cooking food with controlled flame as far back as 1.8 million years ago, and possibly earlier. And where there is fire, there is smoke. Think about what that means. Your ancestors were sitting around fires every single night for nearly 2 million years. They slept near them for warmth. They cooked over them for nutrition. They gathered around them for protection from predators. And every single night, they breathed smoke. Your lungs know this history. Not consciously, but in the cellular architecture of how you process and respond to certain compounds. Nicotine itself is not unique to tobacco. It appears naturally in dozens of plants, including tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants. It exists because plants evolved it as a pesticide. But when ancient humans first encountered smoke from burning plants, including wild nicotine-bearing species, their brains noticed something. This is where it gets interesting. Neuroscientist Paul Kenny at the Scripps Research Institute has studied the effect of nicotinic receptors in the human brain. These are not named after cigarettes. They are named after nicotine because that compound was used to identify them. But these receptors existed in the human brain long before tobacco ever entered a pipe. They are ancient signaling machinery. And smoke, it turns out, carries compounds that fit into them almost perfectly. When your ancestors sat around a fire, the smoke they inhaled contained more than just particulates. Burning wood, burning plants, burning food all release a cocktail of volatile organic compounds. Some of them, researchers now believe, may have been mildly psychoactive. Some of them may have created a subtle sense of calm, of alertness, of belonging. Was that intoxication? Not in the way we think of it today, but it was something. A signal. A feeling that sitting near the fire, in the smoke, was where safety was, where food was, where your people were. Could this be the original relationship between humans and smoke? Before ritual, before ceremony, before intention. Archaeologist Dennis Sangath at Simon Fraser University has studied ancient hearth sites across Europe and Asia, some of them more than 400,000 years old. What he found in many of these sites was evidence not just of fire use, but of deliberate, repeated gathering around fire. Same spots, same patterns, generation after generation. The fire was not just a tool, it was a center, a ritual space before ritual even had a name. And the smoke rose from all of it. Now jump forward, not 1,000,000 years, not 400,000 years. Jump to roughly 12,000 years ago, when the first agricultural societies began to take shape. Humans were no longer just burning whatever was available. They were cultivating plants. And somewhere in that cultivation, they began to notice which plants did something different when they burned. Archaeological evidence from a site in the Jordan Valley, published by a team led by Mordecai Kislev, suggests that early agricultural communities in the Near East were already cultivating plants with psychoactive properties. Not tobacco specifically, but the relationship between humans and mood-altering botanicals is astonishingly old. Old enough that by the time tobacco arrived in the cultural exchange between continents, it was not a new idea. It was a familiar category. A plant that does something when it burns. A plant that does something when you breathe it. In South America, tobacco use has been dated back at least 8,000 years. That number comes from residue analysis of ancient pipes found in Peru and reported by researchers including Dolores Piperno at the Smithsonian Institution. The pipes are sophisticated. They are not the first fumbling attempt at something new. They suggest a tradition already deep, already integrated into culture, already ceremonial. So here is what you need to understand. When ancient humans first started smoking, it was not the same gesture as lighting a cigarette in a parking lot. It was a moment of meaning. It happened inside ceremony, inside healing, inside the marking of significant events, births, deaths, treaties, visions. The smoke was not inhaled to satisfy a craving. The smoke was offered to something larger. But your body does not make that distinction. Your body only knows that the compounds arrived, the receptors responded, and the feeling followed. And here is the counterintuitive twist that changes everything you thought you knew about addiction and habit and the human relationship with smoke. The reason nicotine is so compelling, the reason cigarettes are so hard to stop, is not purely because the compound is chemically addictive. It is because the compound is fitting into machinery your brain already had. Machinery that was not designed for cigarettes. Machinery that was designed for attention, for alertness, for social bonding around fire. The cigarette did not create the need. The cigarette hijacked a need that was already millions of years old. When you feel that pull toward a cigarette, or when someone you know cannot seem to stop, it is worth knowing that the pull has a very ancient address. It does not live in weakness. It lives in wiring that once helped your ancestors survive the night. That does not make it harmless. The delivery system has changed. Tobacco burned in an open fire, inhaled incidentally while also consuming cooked food and surrounded by an entire community, is not the same as a cigarette smoked alone in a car in 2024. The frequency is different. The concentration is different. The social container is gone. But the receptor is the same. You are carrying in your skull the same neural architecture that lit up for your ancestors when the fire crackled and the smoke drifted past. They sat together, and the smoke was part of how they marked time, how they passed knowledge, how they felt less alone against the dark. Tonight, somewhere, someone will light something and breathe in. And for just a moment, something old in them will recognize it, not as a product, not as a habit, as something that was once, a very long time ago, the center of everything that mattered. The first humans who encountered smoke were not trying to get hooked. They were just trying to stay warm, to stay together, to survive another night. And somewhere in your nervous system, that story is still running.